Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are at the beginning of Parshas Chayei, chapter 23. And of course, what we read about at the beginning of Chayei is the death of the matriarch Sarah. And what we read about at the end of Parshas Vayera is the birth of the matriarch Rivka. There's a very nice foreknow. I mean, many Mefarshim say something like this, and intuitively, I think we get it, but it's just nice to sort of read the words. Sforno on pasuk base. Vatama Sarah, achar shenolda Rivka, haruuya lamale makom Sarah. Once Rivka was born, and Rivka would be someone who was fit to fill Sarah's place. V'shenoda zeh la'Avraham, and Avraham became aware that Rivka was born. Mesa Sarah. Then Sarah could die. Ka'amram zal. Shein tzaddik niftar min ha'olam elim kein nolad tzaddik kamoso. That the tzaddik only leaves the world once a tzaddik who can play a similar role is born. Shenemar v'zorach hashemesh v'ashamash. That the sun shines and the sun sets. And what that speaks to is that another sun begins to come out before the first sun sets. And it's just an interesting thing to think about. Of course, part of what's so inspiring about this, Abram might have appreciated it on some level, but the average person, we don't know. We don't know who the great people are and who the regular people are. I mean, even when they're very accomplished, we don't necessarily know really who's who. But God is a plan, and God always has a plan. That's interesting to think about. Okay. Moving on to verse 16. Just to make sure we're on the same page, the famous story at the beginning of Parshas Chayei, Avraham goes and he wants to find an appropriate burial place for Sarah. This, of course, ends up being the burial place for most of the patriarchs and matriarchs, Maras HaMachpelah, which is still a special site in the Jewish nation today. Avram wants this plot. He wants this area of land. He finds out there's this fellow named Ephron who owns the land. Avram says, how much is it going to be? Ephron says, it would be such an honor to just give it to you. Avram says, no, I really want to pay. And all of a sudden, Ephron says, what's 400 shekel between me and you? That's literally the pasuk. And the general image of Ephron is kind of a big talker and not really following through. And we have in verse 16, Vayishma Avraham el Ephron. Avram heard Ephron, meaning he understood that between the lines message was that'll be 400 shekel, please. Vayishkol Avraham le'Ephron es hakesef asher diber bos nefnei ches. And Avram provided for Ephron the money that had been spoken of, 400 shekel kesef over lasocher. He gave him 400 silver shekels over lasocher, something we can't really appreciate much today because it's all currency, but really, it's all paper this today, but good coins that could easily be appreciated and traded, etc. So Avram gave him top dollar, as we would say, 400 shekels, top shekel. Okay, but there's an interesting thing in the pasuk, because Ephron's name is spelled in two different ways in this pasuk. The first time it's mentioned, and this is how it's spelled in general in this parsha. It's spelled with a vav between the resh and the nun, Ephron. And when Avram actually pays Ephron the money, his name is spelled without a vav. You have many words in the Torah that the Baal Koresh is supposed to vowelize the O sound, but many times there's a vav there to clarify it. What's the significance of the change in the spelling of Ephron's name? Rashi on pasuk Tesayin, Vayishkol Avraham leEphron chaser vav. Ephron's name the second time is written without a vav. V'shamar harbe va'afilu ma'at lo asa. Ephron talked a big game and didn't even do a little. Shenotal mimenu shkalim gadolim shein kanterin shneimar over lasocher shemiskablim b'shekel b'chol makom. He took these great shkalim, these great shekels from Avram that would be accepted anywhere. And he presented himself as being very happy to give it to Abram for nothing. So he was a big talker. And so according to Rashi, the idea of the missing vav in his name is he wasn't what he presented himself to be. Like, the real Ephron wasn't as many letters as he presented himself through all the psukim. Okay. And if I were to ask you, so why is it a missing vav? Why isn't the nun small? It would be because that's the easiest thing to do, because the O sound sometimes can be accomplished without a vav. Very interesting kliyakar on this issue. Kliyakar on Tes Zayin. Vayishkol Abraham lefrom chaser vav. So it's without a vav. He actually cites a balaturim, but he elaborates on it a little more. Kasa balaturim fisha ra ayin. Because Ephron we try to be people of a good eye. Ephron was a person of a bad eye, meaning he didn't look with generosity towards other people. When he saw someone had something, he asked himself, how can I get what they have? It's to be a bad eye. The Ephron chaser vav olamispar ra ayin. I didn't check it out, but he says the gematria of the word Ephron, once you take out the vav, spells out ra ayin, a bad eye, looking negatively towards another person. Very interesting idea. Vitamo shel davar. There's a deeper reason. Fisha amru bazal kol anosim pruta lo ani misparech b'sheish brachos. Gemara says that if a person shares money with a poor person, the person is blessed with 6 blessings. V'chol mi shara eino ba'achiv evyon ve'eino nosein lo klum. And a person who doesn't look with compassion towards his impoverished brother and doesn't give him anything, eino misparech b'sheish brachos elu, isn't blessed with these 6 brachos. Al kain chasra vav de Ephron. Therefore, Ephron is missing a vav. What's the gematria of vav? The numeric equivalent of vav is 6. So he didn't get the brachos because he didn't look with generosity towards Avram's situation, even though Avram wasn't impoverished, but Avram had a need at a challenging personal time for Avram, and it really didn't matter to Ephron. So he missed those 6 blessings of being a generous soul, and therefore the vav is missing from his name. And it happens to be that the numeric equivalent of his name, once the vav is missing, spells out bad eye. Interesting thing to think about. Okay, going ahead to chapter 24. Chapter 24, verse 1. So Avram has buried Sarah. Now it's time to move on in life. The Avraham Zakein Ba Bayomim. Avram had become older. He had come on in days. Vashem Beirach es Avraham Bakol. And God had blessed Avraham with all. Avram had so much in his life. There's discussion as to what deeper meaning might be in the Bakol, but we're not going to get into that today. Verse 2. Vayomer Avraham el Abdos kan b'soam Moshe b'chol asher lo. Avraham said to his servant, who was an elder in his household, who really governed over everything in his house, Simna yadcha tachas yirechi, place your hand on my thigh, and that'll be a sign of an oath. Verse 3. Vashbiacha b'Hashem Elokei hashamayim v'Elokei haaretz. I'll have you swear by God, the God of heaven and the God of earth. Asher lo sikachi shalivni b'bros hakna'ani, asher anochi yoshev b'kebo. I don't want you to take a wife for my son from the locals. Okay. This is the famous mission of Eliezer to find an appropriate wife for Yitzchak. Why is this happening? Because Avraham is older. It's true Avraham is older. I mean, isn't this happening because Avraham has decided it's time for Yitzchak to have a wife? Why is the point here that Avraham was older? Why is that point being made? One question. Second question, why does Avraham feel the need to have his servant swear to him that he'll do this mission and that he'll keep the conditions of the mission? Does he trust him or not? I mean, the whole point seems to be he's calling on him because he has this great faith in him. So why does he have to swear to him? And the third question, which I'm sure occurs to many of you, why is this all happening with his servant as opposed to his son? In other words, the question of why his servant is the one looking in on us, okay, we could say, it's good third party to figure out. You could make that argument. But like these directives of who his son should marry, who his son shouldn't marry, if this doesn't work, this is what I want you to do. Like at some point, isn't this his son's department? So all of these questions are interesting questions. Let's begin with the Ramban. Ramban on Pasuk Aleph. The Avraham Zakein Ba Bayomim. Chazar HaKasuv Le'mor Kain. The Torah clarifies at this juncture that Avraham is older. Lodia hasiba shabavura hishpias avdo, to explain why he had a servant take this oath. Vi Omar, ki ra atzmo zaken ma'od. He saw himself as being elderly, very old. V'chashav belibo shim yishlach lo eretz moladato, ulai terem yachzor hashliach yelech lo beis olamo. What's going to happen? He's going to send Eliezer on this mission. Who knows? We never know. Maybe he's not going to be living when Eliezer comes back. Maybe he won't be of this world anymore when Eliezer comes back. V'lochein hishpias avdo asher yelech Yitzchak acharei atzaso. So therefore, says the Ramban, he had his servant swear that Yitzchak should follow all of this, because as we say in the pasuk, Eliezer's holding all the cards. In verse 2, it says, Eliezer governed over everything in Avram's house. So basically, says the Ramban, it's not that the reason he sent Eliezer is because he's older. No, he sent Eliezer because it's time to find a wife for Yitzchak. But the reason he had him swear is because he was worried maybe he wouldn't be around by the time Eliezer came back. And so therefore, whether it be Eliezer's taking this very seriously, whether it be that Eliezer can convey to Yitzchak that your father had me swear about this. This is how passionate he is about all this, whether it be some combination of those two. The point is that now Avram can be confident that this will be followed through on, even if he's not around anymore. That's what the Ramban says over here. We're not done with Pasuk Aleph, but I just want to sort of complete the Ramban on this topic. Let's jump to the Ramban on Pasuk Gimel, please. Vashpiacha b'Hashem, I'll have you swear by God. Hayaroi la'Avram she'yitzaves Yitzchak b'no shelo yikach isha miros Canaan. Why doesn't he tell Yitzchak to not marry one of the locals? Where does Eliezer fit into this? Avol hayiritzono l'shloach b'chayav el arzo mishpachto v'yishpia ha'eved lasos kain b'chayav o b'moso. So the Ramban says, here's the story. What's most important to Avram right now is that Eliezer go on this journey. And he's having him swear, even if I die before the journey is completed, you need to take this journey upon yourself. Therefore, he had to have this oath taken that the servant would go there. And he had him swear that he would do this. Lo hutzrach l'tzavos etz Yitzchak davar ki odea bo shlo yavor aratzon aviv v'ala shvua shishbias avdo ki haya inyan no dali Yitzchak be'emes. First of all, surely Yitzchak was aware that this oath was taken, says the Ramban. It's superfluous at this point to have the conversation with Yitzchak because Eliezer is a trustworthy person. He can certainly convey to Yitzchak, this is what your father wanted. But the reason the conversation is happening with Eliezer right now is the first step is to have somebody go and find somebody or to try to find somebody. And that was going to be Eliezer. So the purpose of the oath is I want you to promise me you're going to do this mission even if I'm not alive. Gam yitachen shaya eved apotropos al nechasav. V'tzivo so sheyasi Yitzchak litzono v'yanchilo so nechasav al manaskein. Another possibility, says the Ramban, is that, Yitzchak is the custodian of the estate. He's got the checking account. So he's the one who's real. Eliezer, thank you. Thank you for the mind. Eliezer is the one who has the checking account. And so he's in control. So Avram knows that if Eliezer gets the program, so it'll work for Yitzchak also, because Eliezer will make very clear to Yitzchak, I can only share with you the dowry and the like if you follow the rules of your father. So we will talk more about this topic, some other mefarshim tomorrow, God willing. But we spoke today about the Sforno's idea of Sarah's passing, Rivka's birth, Sarah's passing. We spoke about Rashi and the Balaturim, the Kliyakar, regarding the significance of Ephron's change in spelling of name. And we spoke about the Ramban in why the oath is taken with Eliezer.